and welcome to tonight's news report. I'm Angie Perez.
I'm Trey Walker.
Reporting live from BFN News. On today's broadcast, we will be discussing Google's invasion of privacy, human trafficking, border controls, terrorism, and European cuisine.
We will also be discussing ISIS, military, immigration, and the weather problems of Europe.
And next, ISIS in Europe with Hispanic reporter Maria Chavez Lupe, Hernandez Ruiz, Lopez Garcia, Bucio Gonzalez Cruz, Jose Angelica Tapatío, Valentina Cholula, Valencia de la Rosa.
Oh, thank you, Angeli. The Islamic State group ISIS recently released a propaganda video immediately after the infamous Paris bombing, and the video features the bombers from Paris threatening a strike again with the eyes set on the Vatican City, Rome. The UK and the US, speaking of the US, they bombed the ISIS traces in Libya recently. However, the international terrorism expresses by expanded to Istanbul, Turkey, and Brussels and Belgium. Enter European countries such as the US have begun debating the ban of the Muslims entering their nations. Explicitly stated that they wish to conquer the US and all Europe. It is accurate to claim ISIS wishes world domination. The conjecture is still up for debate. But with increasing attacks and vicious pride, the propaganda video, they are posing a global threat. Either way, I'll be behind the wall in Mexico. Adios! Back to you, Angeli.
Gracias, Maria. After this commercial break, Russian and Ukraine disputes.
Tensions between the Russian Federation and the Ukraine continue to escalate as Russian troop movements into the Ukraine have increased since 2014. As of February, to the public attention, the countries need to seriously address the possibility of going to complete conflict with the Russian Federation. Foreign and Russian experts state if war is declared with Russia, the Ukraine will only have mere weeks to continue existing, with continued bloodshed and extreme military action. For the past 2 years, with no sign of any armistice, the fate of the Ukraine remains up in the air.
Russian and Ukrainian gas disputes refer to a number of conflicts between Ukrainian gas companies and Russian gas suppliers over price, supplies, and debt. Countries dependent on Russian natural gas suppliers have their gas travel through Ukraine. Russian gas suppliers provide 25% of the current consumption of gas in the EU.
A serious dispute began in March 2005 over the price of natural gas supplied and the cost of transit. During this conflict, Russia claimed Ukraine was not paying for gas, but diverting that which was intended to be exported to the EU from the pipelines. The dispute became more intense on 25th of November 2015. Gazprom halted its exports of Russian natural gas to Ukraine. Ukraine failed to pay its debts estimated at 5.3 billion euros. $50 billion. Ukraine had failed to pay its debts estimated at $5.3 billion by Russian state-run giant Gazprom. Gazprom had sought a repayment of $1.95 billion. Ukraine, until the current crisis, relied on Russia for half of its gas supplies. It has been agreed that Ukraine will make 2 payments this year to clear most of its gas debt. A $1.45 billion without delay, then a $1.65 billion tranche. Russia is currently trying to send its gas so that it does not go through Ukraine. The main project is the South Stream, which runs through Bulgaria and Hungary along the other states of the EU.
This border crisis is getting very overwhelmed, with refugees trying to find protection from the never-ending war in Syria. What began the civil war in Syria is the anti-government. Protests broke out, which means people dislike the way that their government was set up. Bashar al-Assad, Syrian president, did not acknowledge the protests and responded back, tormenting and killing those who disagreed with him. With more than half of the population of the country's pre-war population of 23 million is in need of urgent humanitarian assistance, whether they still remain in the country or have escaped across the border.
Refugees and migrants cross the sea to arrive in Europe. The Mediterranean Sea is called the world's deadliest sea because thousands of desperate migrants and refugees drown on unseaworthy boats trying to reach Europe from Africa and the Middle East. In 2014, more than 218,000 migrants crossed the Mediterranean in October to reach Europe, a record monthly total and more than the total number of migrants who crossed the sea all of last year. According to the United Nations High Commissioner for Refugees, in 2015, more than 300,000 refugees and migrants have used the Mediterranean Sea as a route to Europe. 35 people lost their lives in the dangerous journey to Europe to escape the civil war in Syria. In 2015, 368 people have died making the journey across the Mediterranean. 60 of them are children. Here's Destiny back in the newsroom talking about Europe's border crisis.
With the crisis showing no signs of decrease in 2014, the European agent is responsible for overseeing. With the crisis showing no signs of decrease in 2014, the European Union agency responsible for overseeing borders reported that more than 280,000 people that had illegally crossed the border, with that number expected to be surpassed this year, with more than 4 million Syrians have fled 4 years, becoming the worst refugee crisis seen in 25 years by the United Nations. In 2015, the deadliest month of migrants was April, which saw a boat carrying about 800 people capsized in the sea off Libya. Overcrowded thoughts have been one of the reasons for disaster. The asylum seekers, the latest surge in the great tide of the human movement, have braved winter weather, stormy seas, and closed borders in their escape from the Middle East and Afghanistan and Africa. That is all for today. Back to you, Trey.
And here's Sebastian reporting on terrorism.
Egyptian air crash has been thought to be a terrorist attack. The crash took place on the Mediterranean Sea, and on board were 66 people from around the world. Officials say these people were working for governments. The crash will now be investigated from several governments around the world to find out how it happened. On November 13, 2015, Paris was under attack. The attacks have killed 130 people and injured several hundreds. The attacks were located on the Bataclan Theater, a nearby soccer stadium, restaurants, and bars. Police say there were 3 teams, each located in different places. 7 of the terrorists were killed and 2 fled the scene. Days later, the 2 terrorists were killed in a police raid. Our prayers be with them. Moving on, 14 people were killed and 22 injured in a terrorist shooting. The shooting occurred Inland Regional Center on Bernardino. 2 shooters were supporters of ISIS and were identified as Typhoon and Shaheen. They fled the scene but were later killed in a police standoff. The FBI are now trying to investigate the shooter's phone and unlock it. For more stories, check out our website, bffnews.org.
Thank you, Sebastian.
Up next, we have Kathy and Michelle with human trafficking.
Today's headline tackles an issue that touches the thousands. It is a lucrative and cruel business that occurs not only in Europe but also around the world.
It's been apparent in the world since the 1400s, ever since, Europeans distributed people all over the world for slave trade and stuff. But within the last decade especially, it's been apparent in Europe that the number of victims from human trafficking have been rising.
How serious is the issue?
Well, around 30,000 people were reported as victims within the 28 country span, but numbers that haven't been reported could go up to easily 800,000. Within the victims, like 80% of them are women, thousands are children, and they mostly come from countries outside Europe, such as like China and Nigeria, but they can also come from countries like Romania, Bulgaria, and the EU.
What are the victims in this business used for?
Well, some are mostly put into labor. Around 25% of them are put into things such as agricultural labor or others such, but most of them are put into sexual exploitation. Around 75% of them actually. Most of them are women and most of them are children.
How is the EU dealing with this?
Of course there's outrage. It's a horrible thing to be happening in such a modern state. The influx of migrants that have been coming to Europe over the past decade has really alarmed most of the citizens there. The government has done their best. They've been having stricter immigration laws, using police to bust gangs and stuff like that. People around Europe have also put up relief programs and shelters for these victims, but it's not really enough.
How would you see this progressing in the future?
Well, as I said before, most of these victims come from rural areas outside and inside Europe. They come from areas riddled with poverty and abuse, and their backgrounds are similar to what they're experiencing now. These recruiters are able to lure them into this business by
convincing them that there is some sort of work out here. They take these poor people out into Europe and smuggle them here, and then they put them into this business that they didn't ask for. It's a horrible experience. Most of the victims report about abuse and neglect and all that stuff. The only way this can get better if there is a bigger focus on it. There needs to be more coverage in the news, more government initiative on its part for maybe stricter immigration laws or more focus on criminalizing and convicting these gangs.
Exactly, wow. Thank you for coming here to talk with us.
You're welcome. Thank you for having me.